It was on a foggy morning in 1866 that Portland, Maine, burned to the ground in the Great Fire, sparked by a careless firework and fueled by betrayal, neighbors turning on each other amid the chaos, families shattered as inheritances turned to ash. Little did I know, over a century later, my own family would ignite a blaze of its own, one that would test the bonds of blood and reveal how fragile dignity can be when greed fans the flames. My name is Tom Bennett, and for the past 30 years, I've run a small boat repair shop down by the docks in Portland, Maine, where the salt air mixes with the scent of varnish and hard work. It's not glamorous, but it's honest, fixing hulls, patching sails, and teaching kids how to tie a proper bowline on weekends. That all changed the day my daughter, Haley Bennett, inherited $33 million from her philanthropist aunt's estate. She was 28, fresh out of some fancy business school, and when the lawyer read the will, her eyes lit up like she'd won the lottery. But then she looked me straight in the eye, her voice cold as a nor'easter, and said, "Dad, you're not wanted in my new life." It felt like being evicted from my own family, like all those years of scraped knees, bedtime stories, and saving for her college fund meant nothing now that she had a fortune to call her own. The will wasn't just a windfall, it came with strings attached that Haley seemed to overlook in her excitement. Her aunt, my late sister-in-law Eleanor, had always been a sharp one, built her fortune through smart investments in tech startups, but she poured most of it back into causes she believed in, especially anything to do with kids and education. The estate stipulated that Haley had to donate at least $500,000 every year to children's causes, and she was required to maintain dignified relationships with living relatives. There would be annual reports to a board of trustees, hand-picked by Eleanor herself, and any documented humiliation of family members could trigger an automatic forfeiture of the inheritance. It was Eleanor's way of ensuring her money didn't corrupt, I suppose. She'd seen too many rich folks turn into monsters. When Haley first heard about it, she laughed it off, saying, "Aunt Ellie always had to micromanage from the grave." But I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was already plotting how to bend those rules without breaking them. In the weeks that followed, Haley packed up her modest apartment in Portland and rocketed straight into Manhattan's media scene, like a sail catching a gale-force wind. She started rubbing elbows with influencers, producers, and all sorts of shiny people who talked about branding and narratives as if life were just another scripted show. Before long, she got engaged to Austin Clarke, this slick TV host with a morning show on one of those cable networks, the kind where they sip coffee and pretend to care about world events between celebrity gossip segments. Austin was all charisma and perfect teeth, the type who probably spent more on hair products than I did on shop supplies in a year. Haley seemed smitten, posting photos of their whirlwind romance on social media, her captions dripping with hashtags like #blessed and #newbeginnings. But that's when the mockery started creeping in, subtle at first, like barnacles on a hull. She'd call me from the city, her voice laced with that new, affected tone, commenting on my grease-stained shop look as if it were a punchline. "Dad, you really need to upgrade your wardrobe," she'd say, laughing like it was harmless. Then it escalated. On a live morning show, Austin's show, no less, she was a guest, promoting some charity event she was supposedly organizing. The host asked about her roots, and she leaned into the mic with a smirk. "Oh, my dad? He's this dockside relic back in Maine, still tinkering with boats like it's the 1800s. Bless his heart, but I've moved on to bigger waters." The audience chuckled, and Austin gave her this knowing wink. It stung, hearing my life reduced to a joke for ratings, but I bit my tongue. I figured it was just the excitement talking, that she'd come around. Her PR team didn't help matters. A few days after the show, I got a note in the mail, fancy letterhead, embossed with her new logo, politely suggesting I avoid any of her brand events to protect her image. It read like a corporate memo, not something from my own daughter. "We appreciate your support, Mr. Bennett, but appearances matter in this world." Mr. Bennett? I'd changed her diapers, taught her to swim in Casco Bay, and now I was being managed like a liability. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the shop's trash bin, right next to a pile of old rags. Part of me wanted to call her up and give her a piece of my mind, but I held back. Eleanor's will echoed in my head, dignified relationships. I wasn't about to stoop to humiliation, even if she was testing the limits. Things came to a head at the rehearsal dinner for her wedding, down in Savannah, Georgia. She'd chosen this swanky venue, all Spanish moss and chandeliers, far from the rugged coast I knew. I flew down at her invitation, or what felt like an obligation, dressed in my best button-down and slacks, nothing fancy but clean. Haley pulled me aside before the appetizers even hit the table and handed me a folder labeled "Look Plan." I opened it, and there it was, a bullet-point list of instructions. Change into the provided outfit, some designer getup that looked like it belonged on a yacht club snob, refer to myself as a marine consultant, instead of a boat repairman, and under no circumstances mention anything about boats or the shop. "It's just for the photos, Dad," she said, her eyes pleading but firm. "Austin's family is connected, and we can't have any rustic elements clashing." I stared at her, the folder feeling heavy in my hands. Rustic? That's what she called the life that raised her? The shop that paid for her braces, her prom dress, her first car? I closed the folder and handed it back. "Haley, I'm your father, not some prop you can dress up. If you're ashamed of where you came from, that's on you, but I won't pretend to be someone I'm not." Her face hardened, and she whispered something about me ruining everything. An hour later, as I was nursing a drink in the corner, my phone pinged with a notification. The final transfer of her inheritance had cleared, all $33 million secured in her accounts. She marched over, her fiancé trailing behind like a shadow, and said it plain, "Dad, you're no longer wanted here. Or in my life, really." Security escorted me out, past the gawking guests, into the humid night. I didn't fight it. What was there to say? But that wasn't the end of it. Unbeknownst to me, her maternal grandmother, Eleanor's own mother, a quiet woman who'd been sitting in the back of the room all evening, had witnessed the whole thing. Nana Rose, we called her, had always been the family peacemaker, but she had a spine of steel. That same night, she filed a formal complaint with the trustees' board, attaching a discreet recording she'd made on her phone. It wasn't revenge, it was principle. Eleanor would roll in her grave, she told me later over the phone. I didn't know about it until the fallout started. The twist hit like a rogue wave at a charity gala Haley was hosting in New York, one of those black-tie affairs where the elite pat themselves on the back for writing checks. A video of the rehearsal dinner incident surfaced anonymously, probably leaked by someone in the venue staff who'd overheard. It played on a loop in the gossip columns, showing Haley's cold dismissal and my humiliated exit. But the real bombshell came when Austin, thinking his mic was off during a panel discussion at the event, muttered to a colleague, "Ditch the old man, the board's tame, they'll look the other way." He didn't know one of the trustees was in the audience, a man named Marcus Hale. Marcus had been a former apprentice at my shop years ago, a scrappy kid from the wrong side of town whom I'd taken under my wing. I'd fixed his regatta boat for free one summer, teaching him how to fiberglass a hull and rig a mainsail. He'd gone on to make something of himself in finance, and Eleanor had appointed him to the board for his integrity. The trustees didn't waste time. They pulled everything. Messages, recordings, receipts. What they uncovered was worse than the humiliation. Part of Haley's charity donations were being routed through sham nonprofits tied to Austin's business partners. It was a clever shell game, funneling money back into their pockets under the guise of helping kids. Fake invoices for youth programs that never existed, exaggerated expense reports, the whole thing stank of fraud. Haley had signed off on it all, blinded by her new circle or maybe just naive. The board's ruling came swift and unanimous: forfeiture of the inheritance. She had 72 hours to return all assets purchased with the estate money: the Tribeca penthouse with its skyline views, the luxury car, the exclusive club memberships, the jewelry that sparkled like false promises. If she didn't comply, the courts would step in for recovery. In a fallback clause Eleanor had wisely included, the money was offered to me as the nearest living relative. $33 million, just like that. I could have taken it, expanded the shop, retired comfortably, maybe even bought a boat of my own to sail the coast. But I declined. Give it to real New England youth sailing programs, I told the board. That's what Eleanor intended, helping kids learn the sea, build character, not chase glamour. They agreed, and the funds were redirected accordingly. As for Austin, he tried spinning it as brand pressure in a desperate press release, but his network cut his contract the next day. No more morning show smiles for him. The aftermath was quieter, but no less profound. Hailey's world crumbled fast, paparazzi hounding her as she vacated the penthouse, her engagement ring pawned off to cover legal fees. I refused to file a no-contact order, even when my lawyer suggested it. When she called, sobbing, I told her straight, respect is earned, not styled, Hailey. You can't buy it with money or PR spin. A week later, she showed up at the shop unannounced, no cameras, no entourage. She looked smaller without the makeup and designer clothes, carrying a folder of her own this time, proof she'd returned the penthouse keys, sold the car, and even filed a police report on the sham nonprofits, turning state's evidence against Austin's partners. I didn't hug her right away. Trust like that takes time to rebuild, like varnishing layers on wood. Instead, I handed her a pair of work gloves and a sheet of sandpaper. Start by fairing this keel, I said, pointing to an old wooden boat in the dry dock. It's rough, but with patience, it'll be smooth and strong again. She hesitated, then slipped on the gloves, her manicured nails hidden beneath. As we worked side by side, the rhythmic scrape of sandpaper filling the air, I saw a glimmer of the girl I'd raised, curious, determined. Maybe then she'd understand why calloused hands aren't a mark of shame, but a record of love that lasts, enduring storms and time alike. As the weeks turned into months after Hailey's return to the shop, I watched her transform in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't instant, like flipping a switch on a bilge pump. Rebuilding trust is more like restoring an old schooner, layer by layer, checking for rot and reinforcing the weak spots. She showed up every Saturday at first, gloves on, sandpaper in hand, tackling that keel with a determination that reminded me of her as a kid, stubbornly learning to bait a hook despite the worm squirming. This is harder than I thought, she'd mutter, wiping sweat from her brow, her once perfect nails chipped and dirted. I'd nod, handing her a fresh sheet. Life's like that, Hailey. Smooth surfaces don't come easy. We didn't talk much about the inheritance or Austin at first. Those wounds were still raw, like fresh varnish that needed time to cure. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned fiery red along the Maine coast, Hailey arrived earlier than usual, carrying a thermos of coffee and a box of donuts from the local bakery, the kind with sprinkles, her favorite since she was little. Peace offering, she said, setting them on the workbench amid tools and wood shavings. I poured us both a cup, the steam rising in the cool air, and we sat on overturned buckets, looking out at the harbor where fishing boats bobbed gently. That's when she opened up, her voice tentative, like testing thin ice. Dad, I was so caught up in that world, the lights, the applause, the feeling of being someone important. Austin made it seem like family was just baggage, something to upgrade from. She stared at her hands, calluses forming where soft skin used to be. But when it all crashed, I realized I'd traded real for fake. The penthouse views couldn't compare to this. She gestured at the shop, the cluttered shelves of ropes and paints, the faint hum of the sea beyond. I listened, not interrupting, though a part of me wanted to lecture her on the spot. But I'd learned long ago that lessons stick better when earned, not preached. Instead, I shared a story from my own youth, back when I was her age, apprenticing under my old man in this very shop. Your grandfather wasn't easy on me, I said. He'd make me redo a patch job 3 times if it wasn't perfect. Said it built character. I resented him for it then, but now? It's why this place stands. Hailey nodded, her eyes misty. For the first time since the fallout, I saw genuine remorse, not just the performative kind she'd flashed on TV. We finished our coffee in companionable silence, then got back to work, her fairing the keel while I planed a new plank for the deck. As winter set in, with snow blanketing the docks and the shop's heater chugging against the chill, Haley started coming more often, even on weekdays after her new job as a fundraiser for a legitimate children's nonprofit in Portland. She'd traded Manhattan skyscrapers for our modest skyline, and surprisingly, she thrived in it. "It's real work," she'd say, beaming as she described organizing after-school programs for underprivileged kids, teaching them basic sailing skills on borrowed boats. I saw echoes of Eleanor's spirit in her. Aunt Ellie would have been proud, I think, seeing the money's intent finally taking root. One evening, as we closed up shop under a blanket of stars, Haley asked if she could help with a bigger project, restoring a vintage sloop that had been rotting in dry dock for years. "I want to learn everything," she said. "From the ground up." We dove in together, and those long hours became our therapy. I'd show her how to steam bend oak ribs, explaining the patience it took for the wood to yield without cracking. She'd laugh when the steam burned her fingers, cursing under her breath, but she'd try again. "Stubborn like your old man," I'd tease. In return, she taught me a thing or two about the modern world, setting up a simple website for the shop, even suggesting we offer youth workshops sponsored by her nonprofit. "Combine your skills with real outreach," she said. "It could change lives." I grumbled at first, I'm not one for computers, but seeing her excitement, I agreed. Our first workshop drew a dozen kids from the local shelter, wide-eyed as they learned to splice lines and read wind patterns. Haley was in her element, kneeling beside them, her hands as dirty as mine. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were rough patches, like when old resentments bubbled up. One stormy afternoon, as rain hammered the tin roof, Haley snapped at me over a mismeasured cut. "Why do you always have to be so precise? It's just a boat." I set down my tools, fixing her with a steady gaze. "Because precision matters, Haley. It's what keeps things from falling apart, boats, families, lives." She stormed out into the downpour, but returned an hour later, soaked and apologetic. "I get it now," she said, hugging me fiercely. "I was imprecise with what mattered most, you." We talked it out over hot cocoa, hashing through the pain of her betrayal, my quiet hurts, and how Eleanor's will had forced us both to confront our flaws. It was cathartic, like clearing barnacles from a propeller, painful but necessary for forward motion. Spring brought renewal, the harbor thawing and boats returning to the water. By then, Haley had moved back to Portland permanently, renting a small apartment near the shop. Austin faded into irrelevance. Last I heard, he was hosting some low-budget podcast, his brand tarnished beyond repair. Haley dated casually, but her focus was on rebuilding herself, our bond, and even the community. The trustees board, impressed by her turnaround, quietly approved a small stipend from the redirected funds for her nonprofit work, a nod to her growth. Marcus Hale, my old apprentice, called me personally. "Tom, you've got a fighter there. Reminds me of you fixing my regatta boat all those years ago." The pinnacle came during the annual Portland Regatta, a lively event with sails dotting the bay like whitecaps. We'd finished restoring the sloop, christening it Eleanor's Legacy, in honor of her aunt. Haley and I crewed it together, her at the helm for the first time, wind whipping our faces as we tacked through the course. Kids from our workshops cheered from the docks, their faces alight with possibility. We didn't win, came in third, but as we docked, Haley turned to me, eyes shining. "This is what Aunt Ellie meant by dignity, isn't it? Not money, but this, family, hard work, giving back." I pulled her into a hug, my calloused hands on her shoulders. "You've got it, kid. And I'm proud of you." Looking back, that foggy morning inheritance had nearly burned our family to the ground, much like the Great Fire of 1866 that razed Portland. But from the ashes, we'd rebuilt stronger, with foundations of respect and love that no fortune could buy. The shop thrives now, with Haley as my partner, and every boat we fix carries a piece of our story, a testament to second chances and the enduring pull of home. As summer faded into another Maine autumn, with the leaves painting the coastline in hues of gold and crimson, I found myself reflecting on how far Haley and I had come since that fateful regatta. The shop buzzed with new energy. Our youth workshops had grown from a handful of kids to a waiting list, funded in part by the redirected inheritance, turning the docks into a classroom for life lessons wrapped in nautical knots. One particularly blustery day, as I was hoisting a mainsail for inspection, Haley burst through the shop door, her face flushed not from the wind but excitement. "Dad, you won't believe this," she said, waving a letter with an official seal. It was from the trustees' board. Marcus Hale himself had written, proposing an expansion of our programs. They wanted to allocate more funds to create a full-fledged youth sailing academy right here in Portland, named after Eleanor. "It's a chance to make a real impact," Haley enthused, her eyes sparkling like sunlight on waves. "We could build classrooms, buy a fleet of training boats, even hire instructors." I set down the sail, wiping my hands on a rag, and felt a swell of pride mixed with caution. "Sounds promising, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've rebuilt once, we do this right, step by step." We spent the evening poring over plans at the old kitchen table in my house, the same one where Haley had done homework as a girl. Maps of the harbor spread out, sketches of potential facilities. It felt like charting a new course after a storm. But beneath the enthusiasm, I sensed Haley's lingering shadows. She'd glance at her phone now and then, scrolling through social media feeds of her old Manhattan crowd, their glamorous lives a siren call. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked gently one night, as we shared a pot of clam chowder. She paused, spoon midway to her mouth. "Sometimes. The rush, the validation. But then I remember how empty it was, like sailing without wind, all show and no substance." Her honesty reassured me, but I knew temptations don't vanish, they lurk like hidden shoals. The real test came a few weeks later when an unexpected visitor docked at our harbor, a sleek yacht flying a New York flag, owned by one of Austin's former partners, a slick operator named Victor Lang who'd narrowly escaped charges in the sham nonprofit scandal. He'd heard about our budding academy through back channels and arrived unannounced, all smiles and expensive cologne. "Tom, Haley, impressive what you've built here," he said, stepping into the shop like he owned the place. Haley stiffened beside me, but Victor plowed on, offering a partnership, his investment in exchange for branding rights and a cut of any future profits. Think of the exposure, media tie-ins, celebrity endorsements. You could go national. It was a poisoned apple, dressed up as opportunity, and I saw the flicker in Haley's eyes, the pull of that old world. I declined politely but firmly, citing our commitment to Eleanor's vision of pure philanthropy. "We're not in it for profit, Victor. This is about the kids." He turned to Haley, his voice dripping charm. "Come on, Haley, you know how the game works. Don't let small-town sentiment hold you back." For a moment, she wavered, her fingers tightening on a coil of rope. Then she straightened, her voice steady. "No, Victor. I've played that game and lost. This is real, grease stains and all." He left in a huff, his yacht motoring away like a retreating storm cloud. That night, Haley confessed over dinner, "It was tempting, Dad. But seeing you stand firm, it reminded me why I came back." We toasted with root beers, the crisis averted, our bond reinforced like a well-caulked seam. With Victor's shadow gone, we pushed forward on the academy. Construction began in early winter, volunteers from the community pitching in, former apprentices like Marcus sending teams of builders, local fishermen donating time between hauls. Haley took the lead on outreach, visiting schools and shelters, her passion infectious. One kid, a wiry boy named Jamal from a rough neighborhood, reminded me of Marcus back in the day. He showed up skeptical, arms crossed, but by the end of his first session, he was grinning as he rigged a small dinghy. "This is cool, Mr. Bennett," he said. No one's ever trusted me with something like this. Haley knelt beside him, showing him a clove hitch. Trust is earned, Jamal. Keep at it. Watching them, I felt Eleanor's legacy alive, weaving through generations. Of course, not everything was idyllic. Winter brought its own squalls. A nor'easter damaged the shop's roof, forcing us to scramble for repairs amid holiday chaos. Haley and I worked through Christmas Eve, tarps flapping in the wind, laughing as snow dusted our shoulders. Remember when I thought this was beneath me, she quipped, hammering nails. I chuckled. You've come a long way from penthouses. That season, we hosted our first Academy holiday event, a bonfire on the beach with hot cider and storytelling. Kids shared dreams of becoming captains or marine biologists, their faces glowing in the firelight. Nana Rose joined us, her frail frame bundled in scarves, whispering to me, Eleanor would be smiling down on this. As spring thawed the bay, the Academy opened its doors officially, a modest building with classrooms overlooking the water and a dock lined with colorful optimist prams for the young sailors. The ribbon cutting drew a crowd, local news, dignitaries, even a few reformed skeptics from Haley's past. Marcus flew in, shaking my hand firmly. Tom, you fixed more than boats back then. You fixed futures. Haley gave a speech, her voice strong and clear. This isn't about money or status. It's about roots, resilience, and the sea's lessons, that with hard work, you can weather any storm. Applause echoed, but the real victory was in the quiet moments, like when Jamal launched his first solo sail, waving triumphantly. Life settled into a rhythm, Haley fully my partner in the shop and academy. She even started dating again, a steady local teacher who appreciated her for who she was, not what she had. One evening, as we closed up, she turned to me. Dad, thank you for giving me a second chance. I pulled her into a hug. We both needed it, kid. Family's like a good hull, takes maintenance, but it's worth it. Reflecting on it all, from the inheritance's fire to this rebirth, I see parallels to Portland's Great Fire, destruction paving the way for stronger foundations. Our story isn't over, there will be more gales, more repairs. But with Haley by my side, calluses and all, we're ready to sail on. As the Academy's first full year unfolded, with the salty breeze carrying echoes of laughter from young sailors learning to trim sails, I couldn't help but marvel at how Eleanor's legacy had anchored us in ways I'd never imagined. Haley had blossomed into a natural leader, coordinating classes and fundraisers with the same precision she now applied to caulking decks. But life on the water teaches you that calm seas don't last forever, and our next squall came not from the sky, but from within the family ties we'd worked so hard to mend. It started innocuously enough, on a sunny June morning when a familiar face appeared at the shop's door, my ex-wife, Lorraine, Haley's mother, whom I hadn't seen in over a decade since our divorce. She'd moved to California after the split, chasing a life of yoga retreats and self-help seminars, leaving me to raise Haley alone in Portland. Now here she was, tanned and serene in flowing linens, claiming she'd heard about the Academy through mutual friends and wanted to reconnect. Haley greeted her with a hesitant hug, but I kept my distance, nodding politely while sanding a rudder. Tom, you've built something special here, Lorraine said, her eyes scanning the bustling docks where kids rigged boats under Haley's watchful eye. Eleanor's money did good, I see. There was an undercurrent in her tone, like a hidden current pulling at a mooring. Haley invited her to stay for a few days, eager perhaps to bridge the gap of lost years. I didn't object. Dignity, as Eleanor's will had drilled into us, meant facing the past head-on. But as the days stretched, Lorraine's presence stirred up old sediments. She'd join our evening dinners, regaling us with stories of her enlightened life out west, subtly critiquing the simplicity of our coastal existence. Haley, darling, you've got so much potential, why bury it in boat grease when you could be influencing on a bigger stage? It echoed the temptations Haley had fought before, and I saw my daughter falter, her confidence waning under the maternal gaze she'd missed for so long. The tension peaked during a family sailing outing on Eleanor's legacy, the sloop we'd restored together. We set out on a clear afternoon, the bay sparkling like polished brass, with Jamal and a few academy kids along for the ride. Lorraine, never one for the sea, complained about the spray and the rocking, but Haley insisted it was a chance for bonding. As we tacked into the wind, Lorraine cornered me at the tiller. "Tom, let's be honest, you held Haley back with this small-town life. With her inheritance connections, she could have been so much more." I gripped the tiller tighter, the wood familiar under my calluses. "She is more, Lorraine. She's building something real, not chasing illusions." Haley overheard, her face paling as she adjusted the jib. The kids sensed the unease, their chatter quieting, and Jamal shot me a concerned look. That evening, back at the house, the storm broke. Haley confronted her mother in the living room, voices rising like a gathering gale. "You left us, Mom. Dad was the one who stayed, who taught me everything. And now you waltz in, judging?" Lorraine countered with tears, claiming she'd evolved and wanted to help Haley expand the academy, perhaps by partnering with her California contacts for wellness-infused programs. It sounded like another scheme, reminiscent of Austin's fraud, and I stepped in. "This isn't about expansion for ego's sake. It's about the kids, pure and simple." Haley nodded, but the encounter left her shaken, doubting her choices once more. In the following weeks, Lorraine lingered, inserting herself into academy operations, suggesting yoga sessions on the docks, which clashed with our practical curriculum. Haley tried to accommodate, torn between loyalty and resentment, but it disrupted the harmony we'd built. One afternoon, during a beginner's class, Lorraine interrupted Haley's lesson on navigation, proclaiming, "True direction comes from within, not charts." The kids giggled awkwardly, and Jamal whispered to me, "Mr. Bennett, this ain't helping." I pulled Haley aside later. "You don't owe her a rewrite of your life. We've charted our course, stick to it." She sighed, admitting, "I just wanted a mom, Dad. But not at the cost of what we've made." The breaking point came when Lorraine proposed a rebranding meeting with the trustees, emailing Marcus without our knowledge, pitching a fusion of holistic wellness and sailing that would attract high-end donors. Marcus called me immediately, chuckling. "Tom, I've seen my share of pitches, this one's all fluff, no substance. Stick to your guns." When confronted, Lorraine admitted she saw it as a way to claim her share of Eleanor's legacy, feeling entitled as the sister-in-law's kin. Haley, furious, asked her to leave. "This academy is ours, Dad's and mine. You can't just sail in and take the wheel." Lorraine departed tearfully, promising to reflect, but the damage was a rift that needed mending. With her gone, Haley and I focused on healing. We organized a special academy retreat, a weekend campout on a nearby island, teaching survival skills alongside sailing. Jamal emerged as a leader, helping younger kids build fires and red tides, his growth a mirror of Haley's. Around the campfire one night, Haley opened up to the group. "I almost lost my way again, chasing approval from the wrong places. But real strength comes from roots, like the keels we fare in the shop." The kids nodded, sharing their own stories of hardship, and I added, "Every storm teaches something." We emerged stronger. It bonded us all, turning the incident into a lesson. As fall approached, the academy thrived anew. We expanded modestly, adding a mentorship program where older students like Jamal tutored newcomers, funded by genuine grants. Haley even reconciled somewhat with Lorraine via video calls, setting boundaries, visits yes, interference no. "It's progress," she told me, smiling as we varnished a new batch of oars. I agreed, proud of her resilience. One crisp October day, mirroring the anniversary of Eleanor's passing, we hosted a memorial regatta. Boats from across New England competed, with proceeds going to youth scholarships. Haley and I crewed together, wind filling our sails as we crossed the finish line first, a symbolic victory. As we docked amid cheers, she hugged me. "Thanks for always being my anchor, Dad." I ruffled her hair. And you're my wind, kid. Together, we sail true. Looking ahead, challenges will come, perhaps funding woes or another family ghost, but with calloused hands and mended hearts, we're equipped. The Great Fire of Portland rebuilt the city stronger. Our trials have done the same for us, proving that dignity and love endure, wave after wave. As winter's grip tightened on Portland once more, with ice riming the docks and the Academy's boats safely stored in the boathouse, I found solace in the rhythm of maintenance work, scraping hulls, oiling winches, planning for the spring thaw. Haley had taken to these quieter months with a newfound zeal, turning the shop into a hub for community events, indoor knot-tying classes for kids, storytelling sessions about Maine's maritime history. It was during one such evening, as snow swirled outside and a group of wide-eyed youngsters listened to tales of old whalers, that a letter arrived via certified mail, shaking our steady course like an unexpected gust. The envelope bore the seal of a Boston law firm, and inside was a challenge to Eleanor's will, filed by a distant cousin I'd barely known existed, a man named Reginald "Reg" Hargrove, claiming he was entitled to a portion of the estate under some obscure family clause. Reg argued that as Eleanor's second cousin, he had been overlooked, and with the funds now redirected to our academy, he demanded an audit and a share. This could tie us up in court for years, Haley said, her brow furrowed as we read it over steaming mugs of tea. Marcus Hale called the next day, his voice grave over the line. "It's a long shot, Tom, but these things can drain resources. We'll fight it, but prepare for rough waters." The news spread like ripples in the harbor, and soon the local paper ran a story: inheritance dispute threatens local youth sailing academy. Donors hesitated, grants were put on hold, and enrollment dipped as parents worried about stability. Jamal, now a teen mentor, rallied the kids with fierce loyalty. "We ain't letting some suit take this away, Mr. Bennett," he declared during a group meeting. Haley and I hunkered down, poring over documents with our lawyer, a no-nonsense woman from town who'd grown up sailing these very waters. "Reg is a opportunist," she explained. "He's got gambling debts and sees this as easy money. But Eleanor's will is ironclad, we just need to prove it." As the legal battle loomed, it tested us in new ways. Haley dove into research, digging through family archives at the local library, uncovering old letters from Eleanor that emphasized her intent: support for children's causes, not distant relatives' whims. "Look at this, Dad," she said one late night, pointing to a faded note. "Aunt Ellie wrote, 'Blood alone doesn't make family, actions do.'" It bolstered our case, but the stress wore on her: sleepless nights, snapped tempers during shop work. I remembered my own trials after the divorce, scraping by to keep the shop afloat, and shared those stories to steady her. "We've weathered worse, Haley. This is just another squall." To rally support, we organized a community fundraiser, a winter fair at the academy, with booths for homemade crafts, hot chowder, and a silent auction of nautical memorabilia. The town turned out in force: fishermen donated fresh catches, artists contributed paintings of the bay, even Nana Rose baked her famous pies despite her advancing age. Jamal led a kids' performance, reciting poems about the sea's resilience. As the event buzzed, an unexpected ally emerged, a reporter from a national outlet, drawn by the local story, who interviewed us. "This isn't just about money," Haley told her earnestly. "It's about preserving a legacy that changes lives." The piece went viral, painting Reg as the villain and our academy as a beacon of hope, generating donations that covered our legal fees. But Reg didn't back down easily. He showed up unannounced one frigid morning, a portly man in an ill-fitting suit, trailing a cloud of cigar smoke. "Tom Bennett, we could settle this amicably," he blustered, eyeing the shop like it was prime real estate. "Cut me in for a percentage, and I'll drop the suit." Haley, overhearing from the back, marched out with fire in her eyes. "This isn't yours to claim, cousin. Aunt Ellie chose her path, helping kids, not funding your habits." I stepped between them, calm as a lighthouse in fog. "Leave now, Reg. We're seeing this through the courts." He left muttering threats, but his visit galvanized us further. The hearing came in early spring, as the ice broke and boats returned to the water. In a Boston courtroom, our lawyer presented the evidence, Eleanor's letters, testimonials from Academy families, even a statement from Marcus about the board's oversight. Reg's case crumbled under scrutiny. His family ties were tenuous, his motives transparent. The judge ruled in our favor, dismissing the claim and ordering Reg to pay costs. Cheers erupted in the gallery, where Jamal and a busload of supporters had come. Haley hugged me tightly outside the courthouse. "We did it, Dad. Together." It was a victory not just for the Academy, but for the principles Eleanor had instilled. With the threat lifted, we poured energy back into growth. Summer brought record enrollment, with kids from across the state attending camps. Haley innovated, adding environmental education, teaching about ocean conservation alongside sailing skills. Jamal, now graduated to assistant instructor, thrived, earning a scholarship to a maritime college. "You believed in me, Mr. Bennett," he said at his send-off party. "Now I'm paying it forward." Nana Rose visited more often, her presence a gentle reminder of family ties that endure. One golden evening, as we sailed Eleanor's legacy into the sunset, Haley at the helm, I reflected on the journey. "Life's full of challengers like Reg," I said, "but they show us what we're made of." She nodded, wind tousling her hair. "And we've got strong timbers, Dad. Thanks to you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery strokes, I knew our story was far from over, more horizons to chase, more storms to weather. But with dignity as our compass and love as our sail, we'd navigate them all, just as Portland rose from its ashes, resilient and renewed. As the seasons cycled onward, with the Academy now a fixture in Portland's landscape, drawing families from afar for its blend of sailing and life skills, I began to sense a subtle shift in Haley, a quiet introspection that hinted at unfinished business from her past. It culminated one foggy dawn when she confided in me over breakfast at the shop, her voice steady but eyes distant. "Dad, I've been thinking about Austin. Not romantically, but I need closure. He's been emailing, apologizing, wanting to meet." I set down my coffee, the steam curling like unanswered questions. Austin Clark, the man who'd nearly derailed her life with his schemes, now claiming reform after his fall from grace. Part of me wanted to forbid it, but I'd raised Haley to face her storms. "Be careful, kid. Leopards don't change spots easily." She nodded, arranging a neutral meeting in a Boston cafe, far from our harbor's sanctuary. I didn't go, but Jamal, ever the protective brother figure, insisted on tagging along as backup, his college break aligning perfectly. When she returned that evening, the shop's lights casting long shadows on the docks, Haley looked lighter, as if she'd shed an old anchor. "He was pathetic, Dad, begging for forgiveness, blaming everyone but himself. Said he's in therapy, working odd jobs." I told him straight, actions speak, not words. She hadn't forgiven him, but confronting him had closed a chapter, allowing her to fully embrace our life. Jamal corroborated, grinning. "She handled it like a pro, Mr. Bennett. Dude slunk away like a scolded pup." Emboldened, Haley threw herself into Academy expansions, a partnership with nearby schools for at-risk youth, incorporating mentorship programs where alumni like Jamal shared their journeys. One crisp fall day, we hosted our biggest event yet, a regatta fundraiser with corporate sponsors, the bay alive with sails and cheers. Nana Rose attended, frail but beaming, as kids presented her with a plaque honoring Eleanor's vision. "You've made us proud," she whispered to Haley, who knelt to hug her. Yet, peace brought its own reflections. As winter neared, I caught Haley staring at old photos in the shop, ones of her as a child on my boat. "Do you ever regret not taking the money, Dad?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not for a second. This, us, the Academy, is richer than any fortune." She smiled, handing me gloves. "Then let's fare this keel together." For old time's sake. Our bond, forged in trials, now felt unbreakable, a testament to resilience. Portland's history of rising from flames mirrored ours, stronger, wiser, ready for whatever waves came next.